The All Dress Podcast with Conor McKenna, Eric Macramella, and Sean Starr starts now.
Warning, this meeting is being recorded. Welcome to a new episode of All Dressed. I'm Conor McKenna with Shaun Starr and Eric Macramella. Everybody's here. I feel like I currently am at the lighting disadvantage. I'm not sure how it looks to you guys. I think I look great.
No, I think you look really good. I'm a lighting disadvantage because I'm not as dark as I normally look because of this lighting, and that puts me at a disadvantage because then I can't use my complexion to gain an advantage.
S&M, anyone?
Slightly off center on your
am I?
thing.
But now you can't see the S&M.
Yeah, but I've always wondered, Sean, where are you looking at? You're always looking to the side.
Okay, so here's the deal. And Conor knows the answer to this. Okay. So I'm going to try to look at you now. Am I looking at you?
Yes, sort of. Yeah, it's a bit scary, but yeah.
Okay, so I'm using an iPad. You guys are looking straight up computers, MacBooks, or what, laptop or whatever. So because I have my iPad at the landscape view, the camera is off to the left. Hey, you asked the question, bearded.
It's going to be such a boring answer. All right,
my camera's at the left.
Let's just toss it to Conor because that was a really boring answer.
Have you guys seen how my landscape is changing here? Look at this. I got this rocking chair here now all of a sudden.
Beautiful.
I have to get that bad boy upstairs. This thing showed up on my dining room table when I woke up at 5 a.m. this morning. What is that?
Oh, fantastic.
For the baby. What's that for? Is that where your new bed is?
For your new daughter.
It's happening.
There he is.
You're about 7 months in, Conor. Is that right?
What's that?
Are we close? Are you about 7 months in?
It sounds about right. Yeah, we're due.
Leon.
All right, take it easy. All right, boys. Enough beating around the bush. There is a dark topic which must be addressed. Game 4, the total lack of fights, and where is the pride? This is the Montreal Canadiens and the Toronto Maple Leafs. Should all of Montreal be embarrassed by the way this went in this game, which felt pretty close to a must-win game for this team? That's what they had? Eric, explain this to me.
It was an unfortunate performance by the Canadiens. By unfortunate, I mean slightly, unfortunately, disgraceful. This was a team that didn't compete, a team that was dominated by the Maple Leafs. But what we saw with the Canadiens is what has plagued this team for much of the season and much of the past few years: an inability to score goals and a defensive core that is slow and that labors to transition the puck out and prone to defensive breakdowns. It was unfortunate because it really crystallized what we know about this team. But to see what we saw last night, a performance that fell well short of expectation insofar as a playoff game goes, Sean. It was so deeply disappointing, and it raises so many questions about this team, about its future, about its management, and about its core players, including Weber and Price and Gallagher and guys that are assigned for some time, including Anderson and Toffoli.
Yeah, do we all believe that character doesn't score goals? Could we admit that today? Could Marc Bergevin admit that perhaps when this season wraps up for his team, whether it's this round or whenever? It's, again, another defining moment of Marc Bergevin's. I'm not boring you with my answer this time, am I, Eric? Do I have your attention?
I am so focused on you and those beautiful eyes of yours.
Thank you. And it's another defining moment, Conor, for Marc Bergevin's, I think, inability to read the landscape of today's National Hockey League, react accordingly, and not make knee-jerk reactions, and again, thinking that making the playoffs is good enough and anything can happen. Just get me into the dance, and anything can happen. It's enough with this nonsense. It's enough thinking that you're fooling everybody by mentioning character and get me to the playoffs and having these type of modest goals that you could say, look, we did it. You can't blame me making the playoffs. We did it. We're back in the playoffs again, Conor. They did it again, right? I mean, this is what I'm preparing myself to deal with when the postmortem eventually comes.
Yeah, I think that a lot of fans, I don't know, it's really hard to know how most people feel, right? I don't think you can look at the people you follow on Twitter, the people who reply to you on Twitter, or the people at the golf course, Sean, or the people who send in text to the radio station. ultimately as a representative sample of how people really feel, right? We can all sort of make our own judgments. What's your family saying in the group chat, your buddies, whatever, saying in the group chat after any game? You can sort of, create this narrative that you've got in your head of what it is, but how people really feel, I don't know. I know that there was a really positive response we got. We had a guest on the show this morning who was talking about how you got to believe, if you're a true fan, you've got to keep cheering. You've got to show your support. And when those tickets go on sale for Game 6, you snap those tickets up and you buy them. That's what a real fan does. I don't know how many people feel like that. And I don't know how many people are sort of offended by the very suggestion that that's what makes a real fan, blind loyalty. I find blind loyalty to be sort of an offensive a comment. I'm 38 years old. I don't like feeling like I'm being taken for granted by the teams that I cheer for, whether it's the Montreal Canadiens or anybody else. But I'll sort of apply it to another team. I get fed up with Manchester United. I feel like they've taken their fans for granted, but at least they've invested in the club. At least they're going to play for a trophy later on today. Admittedly, the Europa League title, but it's not nothing. It's something. It's something to hold on to. What I feel like for the Canadiens is just they've achieved so little now for so long, and what you don't have is hope. You're not selling hope. I can buy hope. I love hope. Hope's one of my favorite things in sports. I love young players, prospects, guys that project to be this and project to be that. That's the thing that I feel like it's the present looks dark based on the way they've played against the Leafs, and the future doesn't really look much better.
There is, my sense is there's a lot of frustration. Yeah, I was on Twitter last night and dispatched a few tweets and received, between 400 and 500 responses across all of these tweets. And there was a general expression of frustration and worry. And it's because you look at the team as it's built now, and you've got a lot of long-term deals tied into these players: Price, Weber, Gallagher, Toffoli, Anderson. So this is effectively going to be your core for the foreseeable future. And this team has had the same types of issues for an extended period of time. This notion that a true fan supports a team irrespective of its performance, well, I don't know if that's the sign of a true fan. A true fan is going to honestly assess his team or her team and is going to provide, I think, reasonable observations as it relates to that team. And a lot of Montrealers, my sense is they're looking at this team, short-term prospects and long-term prospects, and they're concerned, they're worried, and they're profoundly disappointed. But most of all, I think Montreal fans, Shaun, are incredibly frustrated with this regime. And after 9 years of Bergevin, what I'm hearing from a lot of people I talk to is, look, he's had his chance. Enough is enough.
Yeah. He's had his chances, plural, right? And the thing about this market is I find Montreal Canadian fans fall in love with their players so hard, so fast, that there's no other way to go when at the end of the day, you're talking about an average or slightly above average player, but because you've chosen to take it so personally, there's nowhere to go other than to be hurt and or offended. And you're looking to blame. You're looking, who's to blame for this? Who's to blame? Is it the players? Is it the GM? Is it the coach that put this player in this position at that time? Right? It's this never-ending circle that I don't think Marc Bergevin, and even if it was someone else making the same decisions, you can't manage your way out of this. I don't think you can manage your way out of this, Conor. And you have, Carey Price locked in. You've got Shea Weber locked in, borderline untradeable. And I think because of those two unique contracts and those situations, I feel you're compelled to give those two guys the best chance at winning a Stanley Cup. And that means trading for Eric Stahl or bringing in Corey Perry or Gustafsson or Merrill. And I think it's because he feels he owes it to those guys.
I guess. But the other thing that it demonstrates to us is how difficult it is to improve a hockey team on the fly. Like, the NHL is a league in which it's so hard to do that. Like, Toffoli is the rare exception of an impact free agent that you can actually sign before he's 30 years old. That never happens. And it happened. Other than that, right, all the good players end up signed long-term, end up signed well into their 30s, and often don't hit the market until they, mic just went flying. Until they are Eric Stahl or Corey Perry, right? When these once great players. And the same goes for trades. And the NHL, these guys are so scared to make trades. They don't make trades. The only real way to find yourself, guys like the Leafs star players, Tavares being another exception through free agency, but you draft Nylander, you draft Matthews, you draft Marner, and then you're smart. I mean, let's not forget what Alex Galchenyuk did last night. Smart franchise. You recognize that there's perhaps some value here. Maybe you can pick this guy up off the scrap heap for nothing and turn him into somebody who can help you win a playoff game. That's an underrated aspect of this Leafs team. And that's something that good teams do, smart teams do. I don't think the Canadiens are a good team or a smart team. I mean, I've been saying this for a long time, but Marc Bergevin lags behind smart teams in the NHL by I'd say a pretty wide margin. We see examples of this, and then we see successful things, and then we're able to sort of explain it away. But ultimately, at the end of the day, you do end up in a situation, like, I don't want to go too dark here, but I'm just going to talk about the last 2 times the Canadiens lost a playoff round, okay? Last year against the Flyers, you had Kotkaniemi and Suzuki. You had Carey Price playing well. You had Shea Weber playing some pretty decent hockey, if memory serves. There was positives, right? Mm-hmm. There were positives there. What do we have here? And how about the time before that? Radulov and Price played well against the Rangers, right? But the Rangers beat the Canadiens. But at least you had those things. What do they have here? You have Carey Price playing some decent hockey, and he's good at being outstanding at times, but it's not like he's standing on his head and stealing games night in, night out, or even forcing them into overtime. Other than that,
I think Carey Price has played really well in against the Leafs. I mean, we're not losing because of Carey Price. He can only do so much. Hang on. No, I understand what you said. I get it. I heard you. The issue, I think, for fans, the reason there's a lot of frustration, it's not only with this compliment that we're looking at and the short-term prospects, is that if you replace Bergevin, Canadiens fans fully appreciate and understand that ownership is going to look to hire a French general manager and a French coach, which narrowly restricts the pool. And we, generally in business, you hire the best person irrespective of language. That's not going to be the case here. And so you're dealing with a narrow scope of candidates. And I think Montreal fans feel frustrated because when you look at the long-term prospects, there's a lack of confidence, Shaun, with respect to Montreal hiring the best available person for that job.
Totally, 100%, and it seeps down to the ice level as well. Conor and I talked a little bit about this this morning in regards to Phil Deneau. One of 8 forwards that has no points and no goals with a minimum amount of 3 games played in this first round series. That I can't help but believe that politics and the political landscape of this province and how unique it is compared to every other province in this country has a direct influence in how the team is coached, managed, and what they look like and how they sound when conducting pre and post game interviews. And to me, if I could take it back to Conor's point about some of the aging players, and I know we've talked about this on the podcast a couple of different times, the safe play, the chicken bleep path, and the approach to Toronto. I think this is why Marc Bergevin will likely be replaced. Is the inability to read the game. Like we all know, and it's not unique to hockey, sports in 2020 and 2021 are more towards the younger players. It's more of a young man's game than it's ever been before, and I think it will continue down that path. And this team went the opposite way. And he went the opposite way with Steve Ott and Andreas Martinson. He went the opposite way there, and he did it again with Eric Stahl and John Merrill and Eric Gustafson, thinking that, well, these guys are trusted. What about the other way? What about playing to prove yourself, to show that you've earned the trust, that you can hang with the big boys in the biggest tournament in the sport? And they don't trust it, and they don't believe it because it's the old culture. It's the old default setting. Veterans know, veterans are calm. Veterans can be trusted. It's hogwash. It's hogwash. And this is why I think he needs to be removed from his post.
Hogwash. Who was it?
Well, I can't swear. I'm not allowed to swear on this bloody podcast.
I know. Who said that? Who's the NHL player who said hogwash? Oh, was it Mark Scheifele when he was talking about analytics? Was it him?
Oh, is that right? I don't know.
You guys
I don't know,
remember
honestly.
this? Okay.
No.
Yeah. This, what they have to do, and for me, this whole French language thing, it's just such a rabbit hole. I don't think that now is the time to really dive into it or tackle it. We can get into that in the off season. But I want to deal with the here and now kind of, and this again, it's just such a big picture, longer form topic. I have a lot of thoughts on it, and I have ideas where the Canadians can be smarter than they are. If that's what they have to do, I believe that there are ways, that there are market inefficiencies they can still exploit if they feel like they have to impose this rule on themselves. But that, I think, is another topic for another day. Focusing on a series that's not over right now. Is there something that they can do? I'm not going to say, because you guys both think Marc Bergevin needs to go, right?
Yep.
He's had his chance, yeah.
So what can this team do? Let's just say, knowing that you're going to have the same guys. We just talked about the contracts, the older guys, the core guys, whoever is your general manager, whoever is your coach, you have those guys. What do you need to see from those guys between now and whenever this series ends, Eric? What do you need to see from that group of players to make you feel at least a little bit better about the possibility that you could actually have success with these guys as the core of your team?
Sorry, which guys? You're talking about Perry and Stahl, or just the core guys?
No. Carey Price, Brendan Gallagher, Shea Weber.
I'll go through because I thought you sort of said the guys, but Brendan Gallagher, Tyler Toffoli, Josh Anderson, Shea Weber, Carey Price, Jeff Petrie. So
I mean, it's a good question. It's a good question because they represent your core moving forward. So whoever takes over this team, if there is a change, or even if there isn't much ability here to make significant adjustments because your hands are tied. I thought Carey Price has been terrific in these playoffs. He's playoff Price. He's great. The Leafs figured out Josh Anderson in short order. And so that's a bit of a concern. Toffoli had a really good regular season, has struggled, maybe he's hurt. When you look at your core guys, I don't know if you need to make this assessment as to whether they help you or not, because it seems irrelevant to me. You had them under contract for an extended period of time. Frankly, if I'm Carey Price at this point, you are trending to be one of the greatest goaltenders in history not to go to a Stanley Cup final. You got an AAV of $10.5 million. I don't know if you go to management and say, look, I wouldn't mind going to a contender. Can you withhold some salary and try and make something happen by way of a trade? But ultimately, you're looking at this core group, whether you like them or not. Shaun, it strikes me as irrelevant given the cap implications.
Yeah, I want to see character. I want to see jam. I want to see care. And I'm not, by me saying that, it implies that you're not seeing any of that. I'm not one of those guys that will call a pro athlete heartless and they're cowards or whatever else. I do believe they honestly care, and they're angry, and they're competitors, and they probably feel a bit embarrassed that they're getting walked by the Toronto Maple Leafs in this series. But it needs to show a little bit more on the ice. Like we keep talking about Josh Anderson, the human wrecking ball in game one. You haven't seen that, right? You need something to build off of. And I think Jeff Petrie, for me, gets a pass. Brendan Gallagher, for me, gets a pass. Carey Price, back to his .920 save percentage in these playoffs. This guy's been standing on his head, spitting out shiny nickels every single game. He's been fantastic. I think Tyler Toffoli is probably a victim of matchups when it comes to neutralizing the potent guys from the Canadians. And I want to see growth. I want to see a little bit more growth, believing that whether it's Suzuki and Caulfield, or Suzuki and who's the other, Tyler Toffoli as a tandem, or whether it's Kotkaniemi and Anderson, I want this fan base to see hope and something to build off with those guys, suggesting that it's not dark, and that at the end of that little tunnel, whether that's in game 5, there is light that's breaking through a seam somewhere, and that these guys with their good wingers can be projected into the future as really good, potent players, making the Canadians a dangerous team up front. It's why, Conor, I'm going back to my original take about, I don't think the offense and the lines are that bad. I do think a major overhaul needs to come defensively, but these veterans, I'm okay with them so far.
Yeah, for me, I want to see them outplay the second, third, and fourth lines of the Leafs. I want to see that happen a few times between now and the end of this series, because I feel like I haven't seen it happen at all. I know you're going to get beat by Austin Matthews, Mitch Marner, and Zach Hyman, that those guys are going to dominate when they're out there on the ice. It hasn't translated into a lot of points for those guys, but they have been dominant. But Alex Kerfoot and company, I'm not okay with the fact that those guys are having their way with the Canadians. That Alex Kerfoot,
what about Jason Spezza?
Jason Spezza, that those guys have been so much better than the Canadians players all across the board, right? I mean, I can't think of an exception here. I want to see Brendan Gallagher get his nose dirty. I want to see Josh Anderson hit a guy and make him feel pain. I want to see a little more. I know they care, and I agree. I don't mean to suggest they don't care, right? It's like people saying, oh, they don't want to play. They don't want to play for Alex Burrows on the power play. What are we talking about here? You think these guys don't want to score on the power play because Alex Burrows is the coach? Like, come on, man. Of course they want to score. Maybe the tactics aren't very good or whatever.
Right.
But at this point, I do feel like it is just a little bit playing for pride. Like, if they go out playing the way that they've played in 2 of the last 3 games, I would say, by my estimation, and really in this series overall, I think that you go into this offseason with a really, really dark, negative feeling about the core of this team, of which nothing can be done. You can't fire those guys. You can't trade those guys. You can fire Marc Bergevin. You can get rid of Dominic Ducharme. There's a lot of things you can do, but those are the guys you're stuck with. And I want to see more from those guys before this season's over, one way or the other.
When you look at, you talked before about Conor about, building through the draft, and the good teams build through the draft. And that's the recipe for success in the NHL. You look at last night's defensive complement, and by my count, not a single defenseman was drafted by the Montreal Canadiens. And we've dispatched guys like McDonough and Sergachev and PK Subban in favor of a defensive core that is not dynamic. And I agree with Shaun that this D core needs to be adjusted. Petrie is great. Romanov will develop into a good mobile defenseman. But beyond that, we have too many redundancies on D, too many shutdown guys that are all
Petrie
the same.
Needs help. Yeah, he needs help. He needs help. He can't be the guy all the time.
No.
Like Shea Weber's play in these play is baffling. It is. Seeing and I think it may be something from the messaging from the playoffs, overthinking on the ice. Guy Lafleur always said, when you think you're dead out there, you have to be able to react. And seeing him be shy to pull the trigger on a shot from the point is like, what am I watching here? What am I watching here?
A guy who's 36 years old, who has a lot of miles on his body. Like, what were we expecting from Shea Weber? What was going to happen?
Fire the puck. He's second guessing his decisions, Conor.
I don't know if he's hurt or what, but this was.
I think we were hoping for Weber in the bubble last year. He played some of his best hockey of his career last year in the bubble, but we see now as a player who's squarely a non-impact player. You barely notice Weber, but for his errors. This is a
no one's scared of him.
Concern.
No one's scared of him. Austin Matthews gets in his face every game.
Yeah,
even people who defended the trade at the time knew that.
Right.
A couple of years from now, Shea Weber was not going to be. Nobody is, right? I mean, other than Scott Niedermayer and Nicholas Lidstrom. And those guys play a different game. NHL defensemen don't tend to stay dominant into their late 30s. No. All right, let's see here. How long have we gone here? We don't really know, I think it's been about 20-something minutes.
Yeah.
Anything else you guys want to get off your chest? I mean, look, I think it's the one thing everybody agrees on. The Habs need more puck-moving defensemen, right? I mean, nobody's going to disagree with this.
No.
I'm sure that there's somebody out there who thinks they need to get tougher. And that if they were tougher,
well, you know what? I think I'd like to say something positive at least. I'd like to say something positive. There were 3 positives from the game for me last night. Number 1, the Canadiens' power play looked better. Now the bar is really low, but they actually were able to penetrate the zone and keep the puck in the offensive zone for a while. That was number 1. Number 2, Price to me has just looked really, really good. And number 3, Cole Caulfield is a lot of fun to watch. He is fast. He is quick. Wonderful release point. Great shot. He's a really, really good passer. Starting to see that now. His passes are really crisp. It's fun to watch him play. And so I walked away from that game at least with those positives in mind. And that's something, I guess. Something.
It is. It's something.
When was the last time? And now I'm not, because I don't really consider myself a fan. At least not the way that I used to be. But like, this feels to me like a rock bottom kind of moment here. Now we'll see what happens after Thursday night. But when was the last time it was this low? That morale was as low as it seems to be right now.
The Canadians are at a
barbershop
crossroads. There's no
season.
doubt. The Canadians are at a crossroads. I agree. How long has it been? I mean, when they were at the bottom of the Adams division, I don't know, or maybe before they hired Guy Carbonneau, maybe.
Didn't they they got swept by the Bruins, didn't they, Sean? They got swept by the Bruins at one point in the last 15 years. Did that not happen?
Yeah. And I'm trying to think of when the expectations were so high and they completely missed the playoffs. I mean,
the Centennial season. The
Yeah.
Centennial season, they just they won the. I think they won the division.
That was the worst.
7 points.
The worst.
They won a playoff round, and then they came out and just were. It was the worst season ever. But even then, like, it's just. I guess it's just different because you know why? It's because they won game one, right? Like, if they hadn't have won game one, because what happened there, right, was there was all these people that were like, oh, you know, what are they doing? This is so dumb. Yeah. Start the kids. This is a terrible lineup. And then it was, wow, they won game one. Look at this. You're stupid. Everybody who doubted them is dumb. And then people are like, okay, I guess I was wrong, you know? And then it was like, nope, actually, it turns out you were totally right. It just happened one game late. So there's been this weird seesaw back and forth of feeling good and then feeling terrible and then maybe cautious optimism after game three that they could compete. And then last night, it just exploded.
Yeah, and you remember Saturday, Kotkaniemi scored the first goal of the night. Right? Got the Canadians on the board with the first goal. You're like, oh, whoa, wait, what's going on here? What's going on here? And then we know what happens, but I don't know. Maybe I'm unique here. I don't feel, and I am a Canadians fan, and I don't feel this sense of doom and gloom in the pit of my stomach. I'm not kidding you. I'm not kidding you because I thought your top three was going to include Nick Suzuki. I really like this guy a lot, and he seems more and more confident. I know in this series he said he's not scared of anybody in the league anymore, and that stuck with me. And I see him approach the game that way, like he pushes guys around, and I just like it. And I like Josh Anderson still, and I do think up front, I'll go back to it. I think up front they're okay. There's a reason to be legitimately optimistic about some of the forwards they have on this team. So I don't feel that doom and gloom have we hit rock bottom yet? I don't know,
Sean. This feels like a pretty dark time. While it pains me to do so, I agree with Conor. This
change is coming, boys. Change is coming.
Pretty dark time. We are at a crossroads, and I think it's a particularly dark time for Habs fans because the long-term prospects of the team don't seem particularly positive in light of who is running the team and who may run the team in future. There are a lot of players under big contracts. That's an issue. And there's just a lack of confidence that this team can right the ship, not only in the short term, but also in the long term. It feels like this is a pretty dark time.
You know what? I just also Suzuki and stuff, like I hate to do this because I find it such a gross oversimplification, but it's really Suzuki's not the guy. I'm sorry. The big guy.
He's number two.
Sure. Agreed. Yeah.
I agree with you.
I agree. I like Suzuki, but the big guy up the middle, that mythical thing that we've all been pining after for a quarter century here in this market. They ultimately don't have that. They don't have it in the pipe. There is not even the glimmer of a hope of that guy somewhere down the road.
Yeah.
That to me, it's like just a guy who can take over a game, an Austin Matthews, right? A
game breaker.
And we've seen them in the playoffs, right? Like Carolina, that guy, I'm going to say his name wrong, but Netsik, whatever. That guy. Okay, I know he's not like a point of game guy, but look what he did there yesterday. Game breaker. They've got Svechnikov. They've got Aho. Stahl has still got something there. You know what I mean? Like so many of these teams. I mean, you could argue that Nashville maybe kind of doesn't have it, although Yossi and the way Saros has played those guys. But up front, and then Nashville's not going anywhere. They're not going to win the Cup this year. But look at the teams that really could win the Cup this year, and they all just sort of have that up the middle thing that the Canadians just don't have and haven't had, and until they have it, I don't know.
No, the Canadians are fundamentally still a perimeter team. They don't push the middle like the winning teams are able to push the middle. No doubt about that. But there is, up front, you've got some good forwards. But the way you fix the team is beginning with your defensemen, and there's just not a lot of puck-moving defensemen that are available, and whoever would be available by trade or signing, you can't fit them under the cap anyway. So that's, I think, a significant issue.
You hope that guy, Jordan Harris, doesn't go away. I'll tell you something, because that would be,
Yeah.
That would hurt. He looks like he's a good one. I think he's a 4th round pick. He looks like he's going to be a real good one. Let's get to the top 4 for this week. This is, I think, we don't try to lighten things up a little bit. What did Shaun, you wanted to do? Top 4 smells?
Yeah. Scented candles was the inspiration.
He proposed maybe top 4 scented candles. This ultimately descended into your top 4 favorite bad smells.
Yeah.
For me, what this means to me is like smells that are considered traditionally to be bad smells that you either don't hate or downright like.
Yep.
Right?
Yep. Totally.
Who wants to go first?
All right, I'll go first. Number 4, the VHS cassette. I love, and I remember I would do my friends, like, we'd go to Blockbuster and I'd bring out videos, and I'd be the guy like smelling the cassettes, and then I'd go to my buddy Jimmy. I'm like, here's what I'm missing. And he's like, what is wrong with you? The laundry list of what's wrong with me.
Would you flip up the little thing and smell the? Yeah.
I love the smell of VHS cassettes. Let's go to number 3. I'm gonna go with Mary Jane, a little marijuana for offensive odors that pique my interest. Like, did someone forget to do their shirt laundry, or they're smoking that jazzy lettuce over there? I'm not so sure. Let's investigate. So coming in at number 3 is Mary Jane. Sticking with the smoke theme, cigarettes. Yes, the dirty butts. It was weird. Like, my whole family in the 80s. Grandma, grandpa, aunties, uncles, dad, they all smoked butts. And I was the guy in the back of the car with the windows up, and they're all smoking cigarettes left, right, and center. And I closed my eyes and I could picture myself, and I'm like, yeah, I do occasionally when the cigarette's first lit. I'm like, that's nice. And number 1, no doubt, is the first submission. There he is over there. Oh. My dog's farts. They smell like lavender-infused flatulence. It's such an arousing odor that offends most people, but not me.
My guess is not much different than your farts.
Correct. I love farting.
But we love our own. It's other people's.
Yes.
We find it. We always hold others
sons
to a higher standard than we hold ourselves, including the farts.
Eddie Murphy said it best in Delirious. It's the fart game, son. You'll play it one day too.
Okay, Eric, you can go last. I'll go next here. First of all, I do not like the smell of my dog's farts, nor do I like the smell of anybody else's farts. No.
True.
But your own? But your own.
Number 4, skunk.
It's yours. Oh, Moufette.
I like the smell of a skunk. I enjoy that smell. Now, of course, I've never been sprayed with a skunk, so I've only ever smelt it from a safe distance, but I don't hate the smell. Second one is the smell of gasoline.
Me too.
At the gas station. Again, not going to spray it and smell it, but just the general smell of filling up, I like. So wait a minute, 3. Number 2, I'm going to go with cow manure. The smell of the country.
Right.
That country smell. Again, I'm not talking about cleaning the stalls. I'm talking about when you get to the country and the windows are down and all of a sudden you got that country smell. You guys know the country smell?
No. I definitely know it.
My butler's told me stories about it.
Nostalgia. And number 1 is my farts. The smell of my farts smell amazing. So does my poop. I don't know what to tell you. It's just the way it is.
It's sometimes all that asparagus you're eating.
You ever finish doing your business and then you just stand there for 15, 20, looking at your phone, forgetting to flush because it's good.
It's a work of art.
How nasty can I get though? Because I want to know if I'm the only one. You ever, when you move your bowels and you're sitting there and then the waft comes up a little bit, and you're like, all right. Okay, maybe I went too far. Okay, Eric, please.
And you're doing this in your kitchen. You're doing it in your kitchen. So look, I got my list, but at the beginning I misunderstood and I really didn't want to change it. It was just 4 scents that I find offensive. So slightly different. Okay, number 4 would be cigarette smoke. So you mentioned that, Shaun. I just think it's disgusting. But also, if I see someone smoking cigarettes, I'm like, oh, look at that. Someone low self-esteem is a loser. Okay, so that's number 4. Number 3, the smell of cilantro. Why? Because if I'm smelling cilantro, there's a good chance that it's going to emerge or appear in my food. And I hate the taste of cilantro more than anything in the entire world. I guess I'm one of those people that reacts poorly to cilantro. So the smell of cilantro is disgusting. Number 2, bad breath. I always think back to my math teacher in high school. Always had bad breath. Can't shake that. It's been, but I graduated from high school 3 years ago. So I just can't shake that. Awful, awful. And number 1 would be cat pee-pee. Cat pee-pee is very, very pungent, very offensive,
ammonia.
Very cutting smell. If you get it in something, you can't get it out. So cat pee-pee is my most offensive scent.
I like that you were given ample opportunity after misunderstanding to fix your list and make it reflect what the actual criteria was, and yet refuse to.
Good for you.
I didn't really refuse. I looked at them. I looked at the
call.
Exercise, looked at the margins of the exercise, and decided that it was
weak,
best
Eric.
to go with this, with the incumbent list. I'm very pleased with this list. I like it very much.
This is supposed a team effort. You're very individualistic. You know, you got to be a better teammate, buddy.
And remember, as a lawyer, you don't really play by the rules. You make them up as you go along, and then explain to people why those rules are better than the other rules.
Straight cash.
Yeah.
Just do it and apologize later.
But I do. That is the stench of defeat. That is what I smell. I have been defeated. That's number 1
my
on my
favorite
list.
smell. That's my new favorite smell. Yes, when Eric loses, my new favorite smell.
We'll be back after Game 5. Never forget that Shaun Starr incorrectly predicted a sweep for the Toronto Maple Leafs. What an idiot.
He was off by a game. Loser.
It's a gentleman's sweep.
Cheers.
Bye.